You've put real time and money into your flower bed, and it still looks messy. The plants are healthy, the colors are there, and you can't quite figure out why it doesn't look like the yards you see in photos, or even just down the street. It's not the plants, it's the decisions behind them. 7 mistakes, ranked from bad to worst. The one at the top is responsible for more visually chaotic yards than anything else on this list. And once you see it, you'll start noticing it everywhere. Let's get into it. Number 7. Too many one-off plants. This is usually where the problem starts, and most people have no idea it's happening until the damage is done. Picture how a flower bed typically gets built. You head to the garden center in spring. You see a deep purple salvia, perfect for that sunny spot. It goes in the cart. A bright orange marigold you've been meaning to try, cart. A variegated hosta catches your eye, cart. Dusty Miller because the silver foliage would look interesting, cart. You get home. You plant everything. It all looks fine in the moment. Then you step back, and it looks like a yard sale, a collection of individual decisions that never had a conversation with each other. Here's what's actually happening. The human eye is constantly searching for patterns. When it finds one, the brain reads it as order, and order feels calm, considered, intentional. When the eye can't find a pattern, it keeps searching. It bounces from plant to plant without ever settling. And that restless scanning, that's what registers as messy, even when every single plant in the bed is technically beautiful. One-off plants break that pattern. Every species, every color, every texture that appears exactly once is another thing the eye has to process and move on from. Multiply that by a dozen plants, and the whole bed becomes visual noise. The fix doesn't require starting over. It just requires a different mindset at the garden center. Stop buying single specimens. Start buying in groupings. 3 of the same plant, 5 of the same plant, planted together in a drift. That repetition gives the eye a pattern defined. Once the brain finds it, the bed instantly reads as more designed, even before anything else changes. Most landscape designers work with odd numbers for a reason. Groups of 3, groups of 5. Odd-numbered groupings look natural rather than arranged. Even numbers feel too symmetrical. Odd numbers feel like the garden decided, not the homeowner. Before your next trip to the garden center, ask one question. Does my bed have plants that repeat? If the honest answer is no, that's exactly where to start. Number 6. Weak or messy bed edges. This one is about the frame around the bed, and most people dramatically underestimate how much it affects the entire space. A strong, clearly defined edge does something specific. It tells anyone who looks at your yard, consciously or not, that this planting was intentional, that someone decided where the bed starts and where it ends. Not grass that got out of control, a designed space with a real boundary. When that edge is weak, ragged, vague, fading from bed into lawn without any clear transition, the opposite message comes through. The bed looks like something that happened rather than something someone chose. What catches people off guard? A messy edge makes the plants inside look messier too. Even well-considered planting gets undermined by a soft boundary. The eye reads the edge first. If the edge looks uncertain, that uncertainty spreads to everything behind it. The simplest fix is completely free. A sharp spade, a vertical cut along the lawn side, a 45-degree cut on the garden side, a clean V-shaped channel. That shadow line alone transforms how the bed reads. Depth, definition, and the immediate impression that this was planned. For something more permanent, aluminum edging, Corten steel, a brick mowing strip, different investment levels, same goal. Give the eye a clear, confident line between lawn and bed. One more thing, bed shape matters as much as edge condition. An awkward, irregular outline that doesn't relate to the house or the surrounding landscape will fight you no matter how clean the edge is. Simple, generous curves or clean geometric shapes always read better than shapes that were drawn with a garden hose and never reconsidered. Define the edge, clarify the shape. Everything inside looks more intentional as a result. Number 5. Bad spacing. Spacing sounds technical until you realize it's directly responsible for whether the bed looks designed or crowded or uncomfortably bare. The tricky part is that bad spacing goes wrong in two opposite directions. Both look off. Both feel uncomfortable. Overcrowding is the more common problem, especially in the first few years. When plants are too close, the shapes start to blur. Forms blend into each other. Instead of seeing a considered arrangement of distinct plants, the eye sees one undifferentiated mass. No breathing room, no negative space. Nothing registers clearly on its own. The bed looks cluttered, even when every plant is perfectly healthy. Then there's the opposite, too much space. This usually happens when someone reads the spacing guidelines on plant tags, follows them correctly, and then stands back and feels vaguely disappointed. Everything looks too small, too isolated, too lost in a sea of bare soil. The temptation is to fill it in, which leads straight back to overcrowding once everything matures. The better approach is to plant for how the bed will look in 3 years, not week 1. Fill temporary gaps with annuals. Give perennials and shrubs room to develop their natural form. Work with the way plants actually grow, rather than cramming things together to feel better about the empty spaces now. The beds that Red is most designed usually have generous spacing between major plants, each one with room to express its full form, with lower ground cover or mulch holding the space between. The eye moves through the planting, reading each plant clearly before moving to the next. Not crowded, not sparse. Considered. Number 4. No repetition. This is related to the one-off plant problem, but it works at a different scale, and it's worth its own section. Mistake number 7 was about repeating individual plant species. This one is about repeating design elements across the entire bed, and it's the principle that separates gardens that feel designed from ones that feel assembled. When the same element, a plant shape, a color family, a specific texture, appears in multiple places across a bed, the eye starts to connect those points. It creates a visual rhythm, something the eye can follow as it moves through the space. That rhythm is what makes a planting feel coherent rather than scattered. Think of it like music, a song with no recurring melody, no repeated chord structure, no returning themes is exhausting to listen to. Not because the individual notes are wrong, but because there's nothing for the ear to hold on to. A garden works the same way. Without repetition, it's just individual notes with no song. The part most homeowners get backwards. When a bed looks messy, the instinct is to add more variety, more plant types, more color combinations, more different textures. But more variety is usually exactly the wrong move. What the bed is missing isn't variety, it's repetition. The recurring element that gives the eye a framework to organize everything else around. Repetition doesn't have to mean identical plants repeated mechanically. It can be the same plant form in different spots. Several upright grasses placed across the bed, creating visual anchors. It can be the same color family, appearing in multiple places, connecting different parts of the planting. It can be a consistent leaf texture, threading through bolder, larger-leaved plants. Whatever form it takes, give your bed at least one element that appears in multiple places, ideally more than twice. That repetition is what makes the difference between a bed that looks intentional and one that just looks busy. Number 3. Too many competing colors. This is the mistake made with the best intentions and the most enthusiasm. The thinking is completely natural. Flowers are colorful. Color is the whole point. More color equals more beautiful. And in isolation, in a nursery, on a website, on a Pinterest board, that logic holds. Everything looks gorgeous by itself. The problem only shows up when you step back and look at everything together. When too many strong colors compete in one space without any real relationship between them, the eye doesn't know where to go. Every color is demanding attention at the same time. There's no hierarchy, no place to land and rest. The result isn't vibrant, it's loud. Look at the flower beds that genuinely stop people, the ones that feel effortless, that feel like they belong in a design magazine. Almost without exception, They're working with a restrained color story, 2 or 3 colors in varying tones, not 7 or 8 fighting for the same spotlight. The plants vary, but the colors feel like they were chosen together. A few approaches that work consistently. Analogous schemes, colors that sit next to each other on the color wheel, like blue, purple, and soft pink, feel harmonious and calm. The transitions feel smooth rather than jarring. Controlled contrast, deep purple with soft white, or rich burgundy with pale yellow, can be striking, but it works because the contrast is deliberate. One strong pairing, not several happening simultaneously. And one of the most underused strategies in home gardening, build the bed on foliage first. When the base layer uses interesting, varied foliage, different greens, silvers, burgundy tones, variegated leaves, the flower colors red against that backdrop rather than competing directly. The foliage acts as the neutral. It gives the colors room to breathe. One more thing most people don't think about: bloom time. A bed might look perfectly color-controlled in May and completely chaotic in July when a completely different set of plants opens in a completely different palette. Thinking about color across the seasons, not just in one moment, is how planted beds stay cohesive all year. The goal isn't to limit color, it's to let the colors work together instead of against each other. Number 2, poor layering and height placement. This is the mistake most people feel without being able to name. Something's off. The bed doesn't feel balanced, doesn't feel natural, but the plants are healthy. The colors seem fine. There's nothing obviously wrong. So what is it? It's the heights. And once you start seeing it, you can't unsee it. Good layering is the organizing principle behind every planted landscape that reads as professional. Taller plants at the back or center, medium plants in the middle, lower plants along the front edges. The eye moves through the planting progressively, from ground level upward, from edge inward, and the bed reveals itself gradually rather than all at once. When that structure breaks down, specific problems show up. Tall plants at the front block everything behind them. The plants you spent the most on, the ones with real presence, are now a wall that makes everything else invisible. You can't see the bed, you can only see the front row. Low plants at the back disappear entirely, lost behind taller growth, getting less light than they need, slowly declining because they're in completely the wrong position. Then there's uniform height. Everything planted at roughly the same level. A flat, monotonous plane with no variation and no movement. From a distance, it reads like a hedge. Up close, it feels static because in any real landscape, plants grow at different heights. That natural variation is what makes a planting look alive. The layer most beds are missing is the middle. Homeowners tend to plant the tall statement plants and the low-edging plants, and skip the mid-level growth that connects them and makes the composition feel full. Without it, the bed has a top and a bottom with nothing in between. It reads as unfinished, even when everything in it is growing exactly as it should. Getting height right means thinking about the bed in 3 dimensions before anything goes in. Where does the eye enter? What's the backdrop? What creates the transition from one layer to the next? What grounds the edges? That mental picture, built before you dig a single hole, will tell you more about what the bed actually needs than any amount of shopping. Number 1. No clear structure or focal point. This is the one, the top of the list. And it's not close, because even if you address every other mistake on this list, perfect spacing, clean edges, considered color, proper layering, a flower bed can still look unresolved if there's nothing holding the whole thing together visually. This is what most people are actually reacting to when they say a yard looks messy. Not the individual plants, not the colors, the absence of a visual anchor. Somewhere for the eye to land first. Here's a useful distinction. There's a difference between a planted area and a planted bed. A planted area has things growing in it. It's alive. It changes through the seasons. It might even be pleasant, but it doesn't have a visual logic. It doesn't give the eye a clear entry point. A planted bed is a designed space. It has a hierarchy. It has structure. It answers the question clearly, without hesitation. Where does the eye go first? Think about the yards that stop you on a walk, the ones that feel genuinely beautiful, that feel like someone actually thought about how it would look. Almost always, there's a moment of clarity somewhere in the planting, an ornamental tree with strong architectural form that anchors the entire composition, a mass of ornamental grass that grounds one end of the bed and gives everything else something to respond to. A bold drift of a single plant that creates a visual anchor before the planting begins to vary around it. A stone or urn or simple structural element that gives the eye a place to rest. Those moments aren't accidents. Someone decided to put something there deliberately. Someone asked, where does the eye need to land? And then answered the question. Without that decision, the eye enters the bed and starts searching, moving from plant to plant, looking for something to organize around, something that gives the rest of the planting a reference point. And when it can't find that, it keeps moving. That searching, unsettled feeling is exactly what people are describing when they say a flower bed just looks messy. Structure can come from a single bold plant, a columnar evergreen that provides vertical punctuation, a large leaved specimen that creates contrast against finer textures, a weeping tree that creates both a canopy and a destination. It can come from repeated masses, large enough drifts of the same plant, placed at thoughtful intervals across the bed, so the eye moves between them in a natural, satisfying sequence. It can come from the shape of the bed itself, a strong, confident curve that guides the eye around a corner, a clearly geometric outline that signals intention before you've even registered what's planted in it. The specific choice matters less than the fact that the choice exists. Whatever form the structure takes, the focal point needs to be there. Something that stops the eye first, something everything else organizes around. When that's working, everything else in the bed clicks into place. The colors feel intentional, the layers feel balanced, the spacing feels like it was thought about. The whole thing reads as designed, rather than accumulated. And when it's missing, no amount of beautiful plants, no perfect color palette, no careful spacing will fix the fundamental feeling that something is just off. That's what it almost always comes down to. Most people look at a messy flower bed and assume the problem is what's in it. Usually, it's how it's organized, the repetition, the edges, the layering, the color relationships, and whether the whole thing has something holding it together visually. Get the structure right, the rest follows. Script notes. Runtime approximately 18 to 20 minutes at design blueprint pacing. Intro tightened by approximately 20%. Dense paragraphs in repetition, color, and layering sections broken up for voiceover rhythm. Writerly/essay phrases removed throughout. All core ideas in design psychology preserved. Outro held at 3 clean lines.